Welcome to the Smoke and Rope Podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Basore, as always, and today is episode 36. And we are very excited and fortunate to have State Rep Graham Filler on the show today. Thanks for being on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is definitely going to be the most interesting podcast I jump on this week, so I'm excited.
Nice. That's good to hear. And Tom Beller, as always, up at Real Leaf. Tom, what's happening? How's the weather up there? It's beautiful down here.
I haven't been out of the cave all day, man. It's been a hectic week
Oh
on
yeah.
the farm, so I imagine it's really nice. You're gonna find out after the podcast.
All right, yeah. I have to put a window in that office. Yeah. No,
Thinking
and then
about it.
yeah, Kevin over at Truu Cannabis. How's it going, Kevin? Down in Lansing with me. Oh, you're on mute, Kevin.
I'm a little bit out of sorts. I haven't been on the show the last couple of weeks, having internet issues at my facility, trying to get this business up and licensed, and it's kind of been a bit hectic. But glad to be back on the show. Glad to have Rep Filler on the show today. I'm excited to get into it and chat it up about some things in the legislation right now.
Awesome. Thanks. So I know Rep Filler has a busy schedule and this is a hard out at 1:10. So I'm gonna jump right into it. I actually met Rep Filler the first time a few years back at my buddy Michael Patwell. Asked me to come up to a fundraiser at his house, and I always go to Mike's fundraisers because they're fun, and I always want to support them. And I heard you speak, and it was refreshing, youthful, charismatic, and even the old Clinton County sheriff, he was charismatic too. So that was a good time. But after that, I learned more about you. He's a state rep for District 93, 2019 Freshman of the Year. And then it was at the MICA Banking Day. I had the pleasure of sitting next to you at a table. And then, of course, last year at the MICIA Summer Annual, the one event that we were really able to do, and it was nice and safe. But you were up there with, other Rep Robbie, and it was a great representation. We really appreciate and coming up there, and we definitely hope you're gonna join us again. Besides that, Rep Filler's been really active in the Clean Slate Act. He's been really active helping great cannabis policy in Michigan, working across the aisle, which I was laughing about talking to some people earlier today. Like that's like something that we say, like that's great. Someone works across the aisle. They work with people. Actually, it's Tom. Like that's like rare now. So. But besides that, I know I've seen you online. You got your own podcast live stream. You're doing a restaurant tour in your district.
Yep.
But I'll shut up now, and I'd love to hear about a little bit more about your Rep Filler, your background, and then for the podcast listeners, mostly marijuana business owners, and they'd like to hear about the Clean Slate Act, criminal justice reform, and your views on the cannabis policy.
Ryan, that was a pretty extensive introduction. I mean, I was just, I'm not sure I have much more to say, but I want to give you some credit and also the cannabis community some credit for getting active in the legislature and getting comfortable and just sort of talking openly. Cannabis policy is not Republican or Dem policy, right? It's just like state policy now, and the legalization changed. I think really changed everything and spoke to how people were treating cannabis in reality. So it sort of brought reality, and then policy caught up with reality, which is, I mean, I went to school in the 90s, right? Don't you remember that anti-cannabis commercial about the person sinking into their sofa?
Yeah. We always wanted to find that stuff.
That's pretty funny right there. So just to see the change in our society, and just you wanted some background, but I'm going to give you some way background. My father is a man named Louis Filler. Louis is my name also, but I go by my middle name, Graham. And he wrote about people called muckrakers. Does anyone on this call, you guys know what muckrakers are, right? People who sort of root out, corruption, inequalities, bad laws, monopolies. And so he writes this book years and years ago, and it becomes sort of like the gold standard for biography of muckrakers. And I really took that deep in, I not only did I grow up about it, so he tells me about it, but right now there needs to be some muckraking and some reforms and some very honest conversations about cannabis policy and what it looks like in the state of Michigan. And I remember saying, so justice reform was, I think it was our in a little bit to talk about, all right, so the laws have changed, the attitude has changed, our understanding of cannabis has changed. Can our justice system catch up a little bit? And there's actually a great story about how that the justice reform marijuana bill came to be. We had originally written one that was good. And then a man named Rep. Isaac Robinson, who's since passed of COVID, just a wonderful human being, very dynamic and sometimes all over the place. He came up to me and he said, the Attorney General and I have a better way of cannabis expungement. It's going to be expedited. The prosecutors are on board. It will be easy for them to push back against really bad actors with the thought that most people, they'll say, okay, I get to file that instant use or possession misdemeanor expungement form. If nobody objects, it goes through. What a great way to get people moving towards jobs, right? Education, spend more time in their community with their families. So that was our in, though. And sometimes when you ask the hard question that's never been asked before, you get interesting answers. And I think almost the entire legislature voted in favor of that marijuana bill, which is just fascinating to see how far that conversation has changed, Ryan. I mean, cannabis wasn't even legal, medicinal, right? And now all of a sudden people seem to really understand what was going on. So that was a really fascinating sort of test balloon for talking to the legislature about cannabis. And Ryan, I will say there are multiple Republicans out there, and I serve in the Republican caucus, right? But multiple Republicans leading are trying to have a really good conversation about cannabis. And one of the things I said when I was up at MICIA conference was, you should treat cannabis like any other industry. We're conservatives. We're supposed to be, proportional laws, not heavy government burden on especially small businesses. And so, don't cackle and say, haha, another vice tax, let's use the marijuana industry as, I called it a vice cow. Let's be realistic, treat it like an economy. We want to see do really well in the state of Michigan, root out the bad actors, and let the market demand run the show, which is what conservatives are supposed to be doing. So that's really a background of where I come from. I was an assistant attorney general before I came here. And honestly, my focus was on fair proportional laws, and it hasn't changed at all since I came to the legislature. So that's where I sit now. But I mean, I'm fascinated with questions. The expungement was a win. You know what, Ryan? I did want to mention this, and my judiciary advisor told me to mention that bill goes live into Michigan law coming up in April here. And
April 11th, we're excited.
And that will have instant impact. And I think there will be a large amount of people attempting to take advantage of it and eligible. And so there is a form, I think SCAO, the Supreme Court, is working on an improved form to reference the changes in law. And so I think we're going to have that available in the next couple of weeks for review. Just make sure it makes sense, right? But I don't know, Ryan, are you talking to people? Are people going to access this?
Yeah, for sure. Actually, something that we just started announcing, my Redemption Foundation and also Sons and Daughters United. We're teaming up with Barton Morris Law Firm, Covert Law, a couple in Southwest Michigan, and we've been raising money from marijuana businesses, and the lawyers are doing it at discounted rates, and we have forms. Anybody that wants to get signed up, we're already getting a lot of interest. We're going to make sure they're fingerprinted. With COVID, it's been tougher to get people fingerprinted depending on what county you're in. So just we have people there to help. So we're real excited about it. It's a huge deal. It's a big step forward, and so much change since you've been in 2019. Our civil asset forfeiture law, which some of us on here have really got affected by. It was the worst in the country. You helped get that changed as well. So it's just when 2019 rolled in, it's been like a different world for us, for sure.
I give a lot of credit, Ryan, not just to you, Robin Schneider, other folks who have been leading, just at changing the conversation. I mean, I came in and I sort of quarterbacked things through, but there had been a lot of work put on by the cannabis community, by the sort of the libertarian community. I serve in the conservative caucus, but we have a libertarian bent, and it's become more pronounced in the last 5-10 years. And so some of the Mackinac Center, just calling out sort of these practices or issues that existed for a long time and putting some truth behind them.
And nationally, I've one of our guests on the show, Will Angelos, I've had a little talks with them. The Koch brothers are really leading the charge right now, which is awesome. Leading libertarian type stuff. So exciting times. It's great to get that support.
Yeah, and expungement, and I know you're going to talk about, or I know people know this, but it's not the silver bullet, right? It's not the end all and be all, but it's part of the equation. When we talk about an individual maybe trying to get insurance for a small business and all of a sudden it gets turned down because they had to click the, does have a misdemeanor on their record, all of a sudden they can clean that up publicly. They get insurance, the small business thrives, right? So they still, got to make money. They still got to have a product, but it's just part of the process. And I think it's a big one, especially in the cannabis world.
Hey, Rep Filler, this is Kevin Pybus over at Truu Cannabis. When I lived in Michigan, I grew up in Michigan, moved to Colorado, and moved back to Michigan in 2014 and started working on legislative issues in regards to regulating marijuana. And one of the things that really took me back when I got involved was how much influence big business has on politics. You're a new guy to this process. What have you seen when you've tried to influence things? Is it difficult to try to have your voice heard in a big party when you're in caucus and trying to make some changes? You talked about mudrakers and whatnot. It seems like for 60 plus years we've had this hypocrisy against marijuana. It baffles me. We've talked about this before, Ryan and Tom and I have, about how it perpetuated so long the mistruth in regards to marijuana and its medicinal value. What do you think made it so long, and what was the change that really made things start to move in a different direction?
I guess the one thing I would talk about, especially when it comes to the justice system, is you have a entirely new breed of legislators in the past 5-10 years, both on the Republican side and the Dem side, who are saying things like proportional laws. Maybe we actually save money and make our society better by diverting people to second chance courts instead of lock them up and throw away the key, which was always the sexy, hold the press conference and you're hammering a new kind of offender. And also this, there's people who were very upset with and want to be behind bars and are dangerous. You talk about violent assaultive crimes. And then there's people or actions that don't reach that, victimless crimes. And so just a change in how you view the justice system. And I also believe the proof is in the pudding. I mean, if cannabis was as bad as that individual soaking into the carpet and the couch back in the 90s and had ruined generations of people or had caused all these remarkable issues, like a tobacco, when they eventually found that it does cause cancer, the proof is in the pudding. And so we as a society apparently are doing okay in 2021. And, marijuana has not hampered us from surviving and thriving. And so I think that finally caught up to this. I guess this is just part of society and now it's legal. And so let's do what we should do and make good laws around it.
I love that. One of the we talk about the new legislatures. We've been a lot of us. Me personally, I've been only voting for marijuana policy for the last 10 years of my life. That's it. That's the only people I support, and that's it. Because we had to. You said we were engaged, but we talked about this on the show. in 2010 when Robin and I started hitting it, and some of the others, only Jeff Irwin would talk to us, and Virg
Yeah.
Venero. That was it. That was it. And then
Yeah. Who are
and
you?
then
Oh, you're in the office? Oh, you know what? You gotta go. You gotta
yeah,
go. I
then we
heard
then we got
stories
in
about that.
we got in with Durhall and Cushenberry, and then early on, really influential. One of my I've become really good friends, and he's one of the he's the vice president of my foundation. Is Dennis Shornack really befriended me in 2010. We met with him and Richard McClellan, and they said you got to get a Republican on board. So we searched, and we ended up finding Mike
Colton.
Carlton, yeah, and we had fundraisers, and Carlton, Carlton's no longer there, but yeah, it was interesting, and so see the progression from the Arlen Meekoffs and all that to you guys has been really cool. But besides that, you talked about cannabis being this cash cow, and like we're right now, like we're being, we can't use banks, we can't. We don't have regular rules. We don't ask for tax incentives like big developers. We put all, we're doing everything, employing, and like we're being asked to, basically also fix social justice too. So like we are like this huge cow, like cash thing, which meanwhile we have 280E in tax, and it's tough. So I guess like I'm just vetting a little bit. You mentioned it, but what are you what are you hearing as far as at a state and maybe a national level as us getting some Safe Banking Act and some 280 tax return stuff?
Yeah, that's a big dream, right? Especially the banking, and I'm not as familiar with the returns, and so maybe that's something I've got to learn about going forward. The banking is the monster, and when you talk about additional burdens or costs heaped upon an industry, no conservative would support that, right? But this has a different history, and so eventually it will change. I serve in the House in Michigan, not in the House in Congress, and so, but it does lead me to my next, which is, find champions, right? And they've got to be out there. Find people who understand it, and I it's not that I stumbled into it; it just made sense to me, and when I got to know the cannabis expungement, some of the business things they were working on, just made sense to me as a conservative to treat businesses proportionally. And that was the start of it. And to understand that if we do, then you get bad actors out, and then public safety goes up, and then, tax revenue goes up, and small businesses benefit. So find champions. It's going to be, we're all waiting on the feds to change the banking, right? And I don't have any sort of insight on that. It looks like I do have to go soon. I did want to mention curbside.
Okay.
I believe there were some changes in allowing curbside during COVID, and I guess I'd like to see them expanded or continued in some manner. I think there was support, not just in the marijuana community, but probably in the small business community for that.
Yeah, and real quick, like why drive through? Like we in the 16 law, we not allowed drive through. Like we can go get opiates, and people like my dad has lost one of his legs. Like he gets cannabis, so like he can't go through a drive through to get marijuana, but he can,
Right.
he's off opiates. So, anyways, I know you got to go, Rep Filler. I think Tom wanted to say something real quick, and then
Oh yeah, I just wanted to talk about really quick about unnecessary regulation. You mentioned something to the extent of not knowing the actual costs, but it's upward of 70% taxation to it at some levels. We've seen to operate as a small business. So I just want to see everyone nonpartisan, champion small business, because the way things are going, until we make those changes, you're only going to see the larger players survive as it comes to being able to deal with that. And also, we are considered farms technically, and I know that you're a champion of unnecessary regulation of farms, and I think
100%.
that we would love to have a conversation about that, because there are things that we believe we could streamline this process and save more of that taxable money for things that matter, and helping people instead of having it just get into the system and just perpetuate more regulation and things of that nature. So, and thank you for joining us. It was really great to have you here, and we'd like to have you back.
Yeah, guys, I appreciate it so much. I just want to say you're doing right here, right? This is way to go, which is informing everybody, making people comfortable, learning to get away from, because the old talking points are kind of dead. It's on to new talking points, which is how we exist in the legislature. You know, we've got so many issues. You know, give me the top 10. Support small businesses. Don't overtax an industry, right? Individual freedoms. Okay, great. You got me, right? And you got a lot of my compatriots too. So thank you so much for having me on. I guess I'll click the hang up button, but if anybody ever has any specific questions, I'll give you my cell phone, honestly, unless Ryan, you don't want to, but I take text messages, I take calls, you know.
Go for it.
All
Yeah,
right.
no, that's awesome.
It's 517-927-0785. I ran on a concept of transparency, and I don't see any reason to change that now. And you can also look me up online and email the office. We get back to you all the time. But I'm really fascinated, and find other champions, you know, in the legislature. I think that'll be great for the industry. But thanks again for having me. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for being on. Yep.
Okay.
Look
Thanks,
forward
Rep.
to seeing
Miller.
you at least up north.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I got to put that on the calendar. Okay. See you guys.
Yes. See ya.